Proxy wars. The term has been deployed to refer to the indirect wars among powerful global actors like United States, China, Russia, who avoid a direct conflict or clash. Instead, they just move their disagreements, if that's the right term to use, to less powerful countries like Syria or Ukraine. This is just an example of the term that's being used in not so much in the mainstream media, but has been described and deployed to reference these indirect wars or fights among powerful global countries who have global power more than countries like Ukraine or Syria. And I bet there's also a few psychological, psychogeographical levels to that term, the proxy wars, which might even include journalists as well, such as the journalist that's been held and detained in Russia, the American, maybe a Russian American, I don't know, journalist. They might have been kept to be pivoted in case there is a turning point in the narratives around these proxy wars, such as the war in Ukraine or the war in Israel and Hamas war. And one of the psychological dimensions of these proxy wars, I do not bet. I don't want to bet. I think that one of the psychological dimensions of these proxy wars is the Hamas, and how it more or less became a powerful organization that has been recognized as a terrorist organization, and how that includes some psychological, let's say, terror, more than the physical terror that's been on the news a lot, especially in the last few months. To me, that's more a psychological terror to Israel than a physical terror or violence. I think that's one of the reasons why Israel is being criticized a lot, because of using excessive force or power over a region. I mean, it's not even a country. And I might have already explained as to what the psychological terror or violence might mean in terms of this war in Hamas and between Hamas and Israel. That might even include some of the myths, mythologies around in the interwar period, and then also the Holocaust as well. And I bet the mainstream media wouldn't like to include a narrative, include this into their narratives, the psychological terror, which is already uttered by the Israeli media, but they didn't reference as to what that terror might mean in terms of, let's say, the psyche that paved the way to state making and country making in Israel. I touched up on that before in one of the earlier episodes of this podcast. yeah, proxy wars, and also the 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 public public talks of the country leaders that are full of symptoms that say a lot about the psychological and psychogeographical and psychosocial dimensions and of these wars that are not represented, whose real symptoms are not represented in the mainstream media. But just in case there's a turn point in not too distant future, maybe one of the mainstream media will cover a narrative that was not around, or maybe there'll be like I don't know, a new leaks like I don't know, Panama Papers or whatever. Maybe that's just going to be on the news as it is, as will be covered one of the mainstream media outlets or whatever. So that in that case, that the narratives, the dominant grand narratives around these proxy wars might change. In one of my former podcasts, I referenced the global war on terror and how that term was evolved into these terms like global warming and climate change. And I talked in great detail about the uses and deployments of advanced technologies to trigger and manipulate not only the global climate or the global heat levels, but also individuals as well. And well, and in my example, I was a student in the United States, and I've seen both global and local examples of the 21st century inquisition of modern times. And that's not confined or constrained with religion or one religion, which is not necessarily Christianity, but Islam and Judaism as well. And they're losing their God, whatever. So what I will say today is something about that's been going on around the world. I don't know. I cannot individuate that. I'm not taking these personally. But what I see, these wars popping up and unbelievably occurrences of natural catastrophes and events, to me, these are some symptoms of not only climate crisis. As a third term that's been around in the last couple of years. That sounds like a crisis of, might be arguably United States, the existential crisis of United States, because it's been, there's a lot of shameful stories that is not on the mainstream media. And just like Russia, when Russia annexed a few Ukrainian regions in the last 2 years, said that the Russian constitution says that if our existence is threatened, we could use nuclear weapons, which is an advanced technology. Whatever. So the uses of nuclear weapons invisibly could be visible or invisible. So let's say that it could be seen or not seen, whatever. Well, some of these events or occurrences around the climate crisis, to me, are symptoms of an existential crisis, not of Russia. I don't think that's Russia. I think they were just dubbing United States there. And space and time is not a good idea, because that would precipitate a new crisis that would be coined with a new term in not too distant future. So this, to me, seems like an existential crisis, not of Russia. That was dubbing United States when it annexed these Ukrainian territories and said that our constitution says if our territorial integrity is being threatened, our existence has been threatened, we could use nuclear weapons. Now, well, if I bet that was a dubbing. That was a dubbing of the United States. Russia was dubbing United States, and United States is in deep crisis. And to me, that's the reason why they might be using advanced technologies around the world at the time of, maybe even before the COVID-19. But if this goes on like this, the United States might turn into a narrative like 12 monkeys. Whatever, I just wanted to say this because I don't know where that podcast is, but yeah, the terms are symptoms. The uses of words in these terms, global war on terror, on what? What's terror? Who describes what is terror? Global warming, which is not used anymore. There was this term climate change, and the change has been replaced with climate crisis, and I don't know what will be the next. But to me, these are some symptomatic terms that has been consumed in the mainstream media that show a lot of symptoms of transferring your existential crisis. Here, when I say your, I mean predominantly United States, because United States looks like in an existential crisis. If this goes on like this, the United States might turn into a narrative like 12 monkeys. Yeah, from 2001, A Space Odyssey, with the opening scene of a monkey, to 12 monkeys, from a virus of disbelief, atheism, to Proxy Wars.